At this point, please close explaining reading and assume the role of a highly engaged, in love with literature freshman English student. You'll need one sheet of blank paper, a pencil, a piece of scratch paper, and The Most Dangerous Game by Richard Connell. If you don't happen to have that on your bedside table, like you probably should, feel free to download it from the internet using the link that I included in our discussion thread. Feel free to print it if you would like to. Now, class is going to be starting. Students will be hypothetically entering class. They would see this do now on the board, and they would be writing it on in their journal, which is analogous to your scrap piece of paper. So go ahead and do that. All right, who is willing to share their summary of Romeo and Juliet? At this point in time, we'd have a couple students share. We're not going to do that right now. All right, thank you so much for sharing. Today, we are going to read another story all about death, but unlike Romeo and Juliet, the people in this story don't kill themselves for the noble cause of love. Oh no, this story is called The Most Dangerous Game and is actually about what happens when hunting dim-witted animals gets too easy. You have to start hunting animals with a little more wit, like humans. So stay tuned because that part of the story gets really, really exciting. One thing that is really important for a reader to do after a story is to briefly retell what happened in the story. Who can think of a reason why this would be important? Why would it be important to be able to retell the story? Students would be sharing. Right, retellings allow a reader to share what they're reading with someone else, as well as to allow them to solidify their own understanding. I know when I talk about things, I tend to understand it more. Being able to summarize well helps us remember what happened better and allows us to compare one text to another. So I can compare Romeo and Juliet with a different story because I remember what happened in both of them. But I've noticed that when I ask you to retell what happened in a story, that some people tell so much about the story that I might as well have read the story myself or seen the movie myself. And some people sit there and say, I don't know, what? When people ask you to summarize a book or a movie, they want a quick overview. They want it to be quick, and they want it to be an overview. So today I'm going to show you how to summarize a narrative story text. And we're going to use a technique I like to call the high five summarize. And the reason I call it the high five summarize is because it uses a high five to help us remember the elements crucial to a summary: the characters, the setting, and the plot, namely the beginning, the middle, and the end. Here in the beginning, we also want to make sure that we describe the conflict or the problem as we've talked about when we've been discussing plot. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you an example of this using our good friends Romeo and Juliet. So let me show you how this works. Let's suppose we want to summarize this play which we have previously read this year in class. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my high five to summarize. And I'm going to draw my hand on the board. And I'm going to make these 2 fingers, these 3 fingers really big. Okay? So that is, as you can tell, my beautiful hand. In the first finger, in my thumb, I'm going to tell about the characters. So now I'm thinking back, oh so long ago, to Romeo and Juliet. And I'm thinking that, of course, Romeo and this girl named Juliet are the main characters. I'm also thinking about the fact that the Montagues and Capulets kind of fit into that, but right now I'm really thinking about just the most important characters, so I'm going to leave it with Romeo and Juliet. Then my second finger is going to be the setting. We know that the setting is the place, and so if we remember, this takes place in Verona, which is a city in Italy. Does it take place recently, or caveman age, or space age, or just kind of a while ago? Right, a while ago. Okay, so I've got my characters, then my pointer finger is my setting, good. Then my middle finger is the beginning of the plot. Then I'm going to do the middle of the plot, and then the end, or we've called it before, the resolution. So, the beginning of the plot, I'm thinking, okay, back in Romeo and Juliet that we read oh so long ago, what happened at the beginning? And I'm thinking about the fact that the Montagues and the Capulets are feuding. Okay, so they're feuding. Then Romeo goes to that party to try and get over Rosaline. Who remembers what happens at the party? Right, he meets Juliet, and immediately they are star-stricken in love. Romeo and Juliet dance. And fall in love. You can see that the notes that I'm taking right now are just quick jots. It doesn't have to be complete sentences. Most of mine are, but it doesn't have to be the most beautiful writing that you've ever done. We are just trying to keep track of our thoughts. So that was the beginning. That's our problem right here, is that Romeo and Juliet fall in love, and that's a big deal because their families are feuding. So now I move to the middle section. Now this, I made it extra big because these sections, especially when we're reading full-length novels and not just little kid stories, might have more than one or two things in them. So in the middle, think about what it is that happens. So the first thing after they dance and fall in love is that they discover that their families are feuding. So Romeo discovers that Juliet is a Capulet. But then they decide that we still love each other, we're gonna get married anyway. So they profess love and decide to get married. But of course, things are never quite so simple. The next day, a fight breaks out, and Romeo kills Juliet's cousin. Who remembers what happens next? So he's killed him, what happens to him? Yeah, we got to learn about being banished. Good. And then finally, after he's banished, or after it's been decreed that he's banished, but he hasn't left yet, Juliet sets up that plan to be able to fake her own death and run off with Romeo. So Juliet comes up with her plan.